Hello and welcome to another edition of Real Talk. Well, it's a very interesting time at the moment with the Royal Commission into the banks, and there's been some interesting findings of misconduct, and various different banks have been named. Everything from forging documents to creating plans for people that don't exist, and responsible lending has at times been in question. It's a great time for people who felt wronged by the banks to jump on the bandwagon and see if they can't get some justice, or certainly a really good hearing. But interestingly enough, the Royal Commission into banks moved towards AMP, and of course they've got one of the biggest financial planning arms in the world, I would say. And of course now the Royal Commission is meandered into financial planning. I need to reveal that 9 out of 10 self-managed super funds that were set up incorrectly, with the wrong advice and without the client's best interest being taken into consideration. If you're interested in the prudent pinpoints or touch points for opening your own and managing your own self-managed super fund, the best portal that I've found yet is the ATO portal. And years and years ago we used it as the basic foundation for any financial planning plans that we do. How we set our advice is all working backwards from the ATO. It's a brilliant site. For example, if we have a husband and wife come in and say that we'd like to open a self-managed super fund, and one of them doesn't do the finances at home, has nothing to do with the borrowing, really leaves it to the other partner, well, that actually immediately fails for a self-managed super fund, because both of the members will benefit from it, and they're the trustees, and in turn they have to be, if one perhaps passed away, the other one would have to be able to run the fund. So these are all really important factors in starting up a self-managed super fund. Of course, the other areas that the bank are now moving towards, because of responsible lending and perhaps I guess the runaway property market and people skating on the shirt tails, now we're going to see a lot more stress testing. And I think it's actually a brilliant way to do it, because what they're doing is, rather than perhaps stress testing on interest rates, they're actually going to set the interest rate probably around about 7.25% as a stress test. But more importantly, they're actually going to look at the family budget. Now, we've been doing budgets within 2 months of setting up 9 years ago. So anyone who comes and works with us, they must do a family budget to work out what the surplus is. If you want stress-free investing, the best way to invest is with your surplus only. That way you're not misleading yourselves, you're not cutting into other money that's destined for school fees, or even, importantly, your holidays. So to stress test it with your budget. But what we're going to find now, for example, if your income is $6,000 per month and your mortgage is $2,500 and your expenses are $3,000, you may feel that you've got $500 left over. But what the bank's going to do now is potentially stress test your budget at $3,000. So of course, $3,500. So then of course, once you take your living expenses and your mortgage into consideration, stress testing at a higher interest rate and higher expenses, you'll suddenly fail the loan. So these are very prudent things to be mindful of when you are moving forward. And believe me, the banks are absolutely moving this way. We're already getting correspondence, we're already getting dialogue, and the industry is already talking. Have a budget and stick to your budget, and more importantly, be able to prove that your budget and your bank accounts match. That's how you'll get a good loan, that if you're particularly trying to be a little bit ambitious. Interestingly enough, with a lot of the changes and regulations precluding finance offshore, we saw a massive swing of mezzanine funds and mortgage funds springing up. What we're seeing now is people leaving their deposits and just walking away, which in turn had an amazing effect for me and my clients, because we've got developers coming to us saying, look, Lynn, we've kept the deposit, we've lowered the price by 10%, and we're really keen to move the stock. And so it's working very well for the locals. And I'm obviously, somebody's missed out there, but out of someone's misfortune can come good fortune. Just having a look at, we've had a lot of valuations happened lately. We're doing, we've got quite a few buildings settled, but a lot of my clients have been in the program for sort of 8 and 9 years now, and they're wanting to do more. So I just had a client call me the other day. She bought an apartment for $650,000 4 years ago. She just got a bank val at $750,000. So that's starting to see some good growth. I had another client, he and I actually share the same blueprint property, and he got a valuation. We paid $525,000 for our one bed plus studies, and the bank's just given it $650,000. So I'm finally seeing some really good growth in the portfolios. It has been slow, but it is coming. Funding is so tight for developers at the moment. I just heard a story of a developer paying $20 million for a site, couldn't get the finance and walked away from a $3 million deposit. Developers are finding it really hard to get finance. Undersupply, I promise you, is coming. So if you are investing now and you are holding assets, it is all going to come to light in the next few years. I'll just close on the average 2-bedroom apartment, $550,000 at the moment. The average rent for that apartment, $600 a week. Remember the old adage, knock off the zeros. It's doing really well. So rentals are performing extremely well, tax is performing well, and finally capital growth has caught up. Thanks so much for listening.